Sometimes in our lives there are situations when we really need money, so much so that we are ready to do a lot, if not everything, for the sake of money. But often, our problems do not bother anyone except ourselves. People live their own lives, they have enough of their own problems, and therefore they do not care about us at all. And yet, sometimes we can count on the help of other people who are ready to provide it to us, if, of course, they have such an opportunity. In this article, we will talk about what real financial help should be and whether it should be at all, that is, whether it should be provided. So, real financial help, from my point of view, consists, or at least should consist, in real help to people in need of funds, and not in its imitation. It is necessary that the one who intends to help another person with money does not try to profit at his expense, that is, does not try to profit from other people's problems. For example, by offering a super unfavorable loan or in some other way making a person in need of money dependent on himself, a bad person, thus, uses other people's problems, perhaps even other people's misfortune, in his own selfish interests. This is not good at all, because this is not help, this is social parasitism. You can't cynically devour each other like that, because if we all act like that, it will be the end for us all. Alone, we cannot survive, that is a fact, and therefore, there is no need to use people's problems with money, and any problems at all, for your own enrichment, or for something else that can cause even more harm to these people who need help. And if you do this, if you profit from other people's troubles, then be prepared for the same attitude towards yourself, from the same parasites as you. Do not forget about the boomerang effect, which is not a fiction, but actually takes place in our lives. It is clear that we should not count on completely gratuitous help from other people. After all, whatever you say, but real help with money for free is, you must admit, somehow unrealistic, both looks and sounds. However, there are cases when people, usually not rich, are ready to give a person in need of money a certain amount of money in order to really help him. However, I think you should not count on such charity, because you can count on help from kind people all your life, but never get it. It is better to look for ways to get money in the form of paid help, but on terms acceptable to you, on, let's say, human terms. I think we need to help each other, including with money. But we should do it correctly, so as not to feed all sorts of lazy parasites, but to really pull others out of the financial hole, people like us, who found themselves in it due to an unfavorable set of circumstances. When I was little and my family had quite serious problems with money, well, needless to say, my parents did not receive their wages for several months. Then some people lent my parents the money they needed so much, without any interest, of course, helping our family to make ends meet. These, without exaggeration, it will be said, kind people, of course, did not give money to my parents, they lent it to them, and my parents, as decent people, always repaid their debts. This is normal, very necessary, and certainly the most real financial help, which my family really needed then. Today, most of us have a job where we are paid more or less normal wages, they pay on time, without delay, and nevertheless, problems with money can arise for each of us at any time. And that means that we may need financial help, in one form or another. And even if you don't know anyone who could lend you money, you can still count on various non-bank credit organizations, including those located on the internet, which are ready to lend you a certain amount of money, but at interest. Such assistance is, in principle, convenient in that we can always count on it, but as for interest, not everything is as beautifully arranged as we would like. Be that as it may, the most important thing for us is the availability of opportunities that allow us to solve our problems with money. Yes, all these loans and credits, in some cases do not even look like help, because those who give them to us, put us on interest, which, in some cases, can not so much solve our financial problems, as aggravate them. But here, you yourself must see how much this or that form of financial assistance suits you. Well, if we cannot find people who are ready to give us money or at least just lend it, then what else can we do, except loans and credits? Perhaps only begging, so as not to stretch out our legs, as Ostap Bender said in the film 12 Chairs. This is, of course, an option, and you can use it if you do not consider it beneath your dignity to extend a hand. But personally, I would never give money to beggars, because I consider them lazy slackers who resort to the simplest form of earning money, begging, instead of looking for opportunities to earn it somehow. In my opinion, it is better to borrow money from a bank or non-bank organization than to beg. For example, there are such types of loans and credits that today you can get very quickly, without unnecessary, so to speak, hassle, without unnecessary stress and on quite acceptable terms for us, when the interest rate is not high. And this is quite acceptable help for us, you must agree, help for those of us who really need money, but who do not have friends and acquaintances who could lend this money. When we borrow money from our friends, acquaintances, relatives, and/or colleagues at work, then for us it is certainly better than taking a loan, but not all of us have responsive people at hand, that's the thing. As for ourselves, ordinary people, then, as I already said at the very beginning of this article, we ourselves should not try to profit from other people's problems if we sincerely want to help people with money, because it is not in our interests. You see, all these creditors, all these credit organizations, for them our problems are business. They help people with money only for their own benefit. For you and me, helping our own kind is not business, it is precisely the help that we provide in the expectation that when we ourselves need the same help, we will be able to receive it on the same terms on which we ourselves provided it. This is the rule of mutual exchange, have you heard of it? It exists so that it would be easier for us to live, so that we help each other, for the survival of our species, which depends on the survival of individuals. We need to understand why we need to help each other at all. In this world, people have always been divided and are divided by class. When one group of people is the elite, another considers itself close to the elite, and everyone else is a crowd, cattle, and so on. So, you can call the majority of people cattle as much as you like, considering yourself close to the elite, but many of us can only get real, normal help from this very majority, that is, from cattle. Yes, you don't need to think that you, no matter how high your salary or income, are part of the chosen ones club, which not even every businessman gets into. Look how many of these businessmen are now sitting out in London, being lowered in their homeland, and yet, they also thought that they were not a crowd, not cattle, that they were part of the elite, that they were part of those who hold power. But here's the rubbish, it turns out that all these businessmen are the same cattle for the ruling elite as ordinary workers. And if all these businessmen and the people have never been distinguished by unity, due to their own stupidity, then as for the elite, it is very much united internally, and these people in power, unlike many of us, help each other in order to survive and hold on to power in their hands. So learn from the strong and rich people, learn from them how to help their own kind. And do not consider other people worse than you. Among us, of course, there may be outright trash, who can hardly be called people, but still, most of us are more or less normal people, who in order to survive, do not need to eat each other, but help each other. If we do not help ourselves, no one will help us. If we all only eat each other, our life will turn into hell. Try to understand this, including you gentlemen businessmen, I know your morals well. Be that as it may, help is not the same. If everything were so simple, if for every good deed we at least did not get a slap in the face from the one we helped, then these good and kind deeds could be done left and right. But in life, everything is much more complicated, and it is not always appropriate to help someone with something. Therefore, it is very important to understand that both we ourselves and other people should ask for and provide help with money only in cases when there is a real need for it. For example, as for me, I once helped people with money, lent them money, and to be honest, nothing good came of it. People just climbed on my neck, that's all. Of course, there were people who needed my money, who returned it on time, and thanked me with all their hearts, and most importantly, never asked me for money again. That is, they did not get used to this way of solving their financial problems. But basically, as far as money is concerned, it was mostly all sorts of scum who came to me for it, asking me for help, but not always returning the money. Some people still owe me money, which they, apparently, are not going to return. But for me this is not a problem, it is rather my payment for my own mistakes. This is a lesson for me that I have learned well. Perhaps it was only I who was so unlucky with people who needed financial help, but nevertheless, I made the appropriate conclusions from this life experience. Real help to people with money should consist in the fact that this money is directed to the right things, that is, to such things that will allow to avoid occurrence of similar problems with money in the future. In general, there should be benefit from the money with which we help someone or someone helps us with it. If there is no benefit, if the money that is someone's help to someone is stupidly eaten up, then there is no need to talk about help as such, because money, in such a case, as a tool, is used ineffectively. Now, if you, for example, give money to some alcoholic for a bottle, or help a beggar with money, then this is not help at all, this is your stupidity. Help with money, with meaning, do not hand it out left and right just like that, even if you have such an opportunity, and ask for help yourself only in those cases when you really need it. As I have already said above, I provided some help with money to some people, who then asked me for it again, having forgotten to thank me for the last time, then they asked for money again, and so on until I sent them to hell. Because there was no end to this impudent behavior of theirs. Yes, these people gave me money, with delays, but they gave it, but at the same time, they immediately asked me to lend them money again, and this simply pissed me off, after which, as I have already said, I sent them to hell. Now, of course, I don't get involved with such people at all. I don't help anyone with money at all, and I don't communicate with those who need help in words, but not in deeds, and my life has become much calmer. But when I was stupider, I naively believed that by helping people with money, I was doing good for them, for which they would be grateful to me and I myself would be able to count on their help when I need it. Be that as it may, this world is full of people who can only ask. But they themselves will not part with their shit if you ask them for it. So be smarter, help people with money, help, but not everyone and not always, but only those of them who really need it and who have at least some conscience. For example, I now help people not with money, but with knowledge, which I generously share with everyone who experiences financial difficulties in life or just wants to learn as much as possible about money. And this help is, in fact, more valuable than money, because it is not a fish, that is, not money, but a fishing rod, that is, knowledge about money, with the help of which it can be earned. As for money, I help only selected people with it, whom I know well and whom I trust unconditionally. And they do not let me down. And they have not asked me for money for a long time, because, firstly, they have learned to earn it, and secondly, they have learned to avoid most financial problems. A smart person, in general, rarely experiences problems with money, and if they appear to him, due to an unfavorable combination of circumstances, then those who want to help him will always be found. So be normal people, do not be impudent and do not be greedy, and then people will gladly help you with money, in really difficult times for your financial situation. In general, it is possible to provide people with very good help, without any money. After all, money is an intermediary commodity, necessary for us to exchange goods and services, And if it is possible to do without this intermediary, then why, one wonders, resort to its help? You can help with deeds and things. Help people with deeds, or with some things that they need. Or help people with knowledge, in which, as we know, great power is hidden, as, for example, I do on this site. Such help is at least no worse than the help that can be given to a person by giving him money, and in some cases, it is even better. Here, there are such people who, well, let's say, are very stupid, and for this very reason, they constantly have problems with money. Giving such people money, trying to help them, is useless, because money will not help a stupid person. Moreover, in some cases, money only harms people who have a mess in their heads. After all, they themselves do not understand that by having constant problems with money, they prove that they are not smart enough to manage it properly, and therefore, no matter how much money you give such people, their life will not change for the better. Because, not knowing how to manage money, stupid people, precisely because of money, will create even more problems for themselves. Any financial assistance should be temporary. You can't develop a habit of living at someone else's expense. If a person needs money, and this can happen to any of us, then you can help him, but at the same time, you need to get him to take decisive actions aimed at preventing similar financial problems in the future. That is, every person who has encountered financial difficulties should draw conclusions from what happened to him, so that in the future, if possible, they do not allow similar situations to repeat in his life. And if you warn the person you are going to help with money that you are helping him for the first and last time, then it is quite possible that he will, firstly, hear you, and secondly, will think before bringing his financial situation to a problematic state. If a person does not draw conclusions from all his actions that lead him to problems with money, then, again, firstly, he will constantly have these problems, and secondly, helping him with money means wasting time, not to mention money. A person is a creature that very quickly gets used to good things and begins to consider this good as something self-evident, something that has always been and will always be. So if you help a person with money once, then help him again, and again, then do not be surprised that he will come to you not for help, but for a tribute, which you will be obliged to provide him with, because he needs it. Yes, this often happens. I have encountered this myself. It is like in the movie Dogville, in which people over time became impudent to the limit. And you, perhaps, behave the same way when you get used to someone else's help and begin to see in the person who helps you your slave. Now, if you do not control yourself, if you become impudent in those cases when someone treats you humanely, then in difficult times, no one will want to help you, except for the credit organizations I have already mentioned, which, of course, will give you money, but at a very high interest rate. I hope you will not allow this kind of behavior to occur in your life, not towards yourself, not towards other people. And here's what else I wanted to tell you, dear readers. If you need financial help, if you urgently need money, then be attentive to those who offer you their help. Judging by my observations of this sinful world, there are no fewer virtues in it, rather the opposite. There are only more people willing to help us, to solve any of our problems, including problems with money. On the same internet, urgent financial help has become something self-evident, but the interest rates for this help, from my point of view, are too high. No, I am in no way against all these loans and microloans, because with skillful use of money borrowed on the internet, you can very quickly sort out some of your current problems, for which this money is needed like air. But knowing how to use borrowed money is not like picking your nose with your finger. You need to think through your actions several steps ahead in order to foresee the consequences of these actions. And then, don't forget that if you borrow money, you will have to pay it back, with interest, which means your current money problem should be resolved quickly so that it doesn't develop into an even bigger problem because of your debts. But the main thing you should understand is that your money problems are an opportunity for some people to profit at your expense. Be very careful, look closely at the people who offer you their help, try to understand what interests they pursue by helping you. No one in this world does anything for nothing, except fools, keep this in mind. It seems that many people wish us well, but in fact, almost every such benefactor sees us as their victim. You know where the road is paved with good intentions, to hell. So think with your head, think about the interests of other people that they may pursue by offering you their help. Be sure to think about this before agreeing to this help. And you yourself, too, try to do good wisely, so as not to do evil. Do not help with money those people who are used to living at someone else's expense. Do not indulge their laziness and greed. We need to help each other, otherwise we will not survive. We even have such an instinct, herd instinct or crowd instinct, which forces us to do this. But we need to help each other wisely, consciously, and therefore, mainly on remunerative terms. This is my opinion, formed over the years of my observations of people and a thorough analysis of the history of mankind, in which very often good deeds turned out to be not as good as those who did them thought.